All right, everybody, welcome back. We're here live at Blockhouse. I'm so grateful for these incredible speakers. We have a wonderful talk for you guys today, and thank you all again for joining us and rocking with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Great to be here.
Before we get into the crux of our conversation, I'd love for you all to just introduce yourself to our audience. So, Brig, why don't we kick it off with you? Tell us a bit about yourself, what you're working on.
Sure. I'm Brigham Adams. I'm the technical co-founder at Realign Labs, and we're creating context and governance infrastructure for the agentic web. So couldn't be more happy to be at this panel today.
Amazing. And thank you for coming again. And Dean, kicking it over to you, man. Same question.
Sure. I've spent most of my career on the question of how do you let software act on your behalf without giving it all your authority? And that led to working on the first production smart contract in the late 80s, so quite a bit before blockchain, secure distributed systems at Sun Microsystems and Microsoft, and then most recently doing cross-chain orchestration at Agoric. And so we're building an app using that, WiMAX, which is a cross-chain non-custodial capital allocation platform. So enabling safe agentic deployment of capital to be able to do that when you're not paying attention. And so it lets users delegate their authority to a contract that will then enforce the rules so that you can safely use agents.
Amazing. And finally, Lincoln, back to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you are building.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for having me. I'm Lincoln. I'm the products lead for Coinbase's AI trading and payments initiatives. Been at Coinbase for about 2 or so years now. In that time, I created Agentic, which was a very early implementation of an agentic wallet. My team built X402, Coinbase Advisor, and now I'm primarily thinking about and working on Coinbase for Agents, which is our CLI MCP to give agents a primary financial account.
Incredible. Well, thank you all so much. I feel incredibly lucky to be talking with the three of you. And let's just jump right in. Lincoln, I'm going to go to you first for this one. We've been looking at how AI and agents have been moving real capital on-chain and off-chain. And this was a future scenario people were building for, but now it's our present reality and it's happening today. What does it look like for trustworthy capital deployment to come on-chain? And how are you guys building towards that at Coinbase?
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch this evolution of users interacting with agents. And it's been, in some sense, analogous to how we've seen the rollout of self-driving cars, where initially you had stage 1, stage 2, and it was able to parallel park for you. And people thought that was insane and crazy and that they would never let a car drive themselves on a highway. And now we see Waymos popping up everywhere, and you don't even really think about it anymore if you're used to taking them. And we're seeing the same sort of gradual progression and increase in both the user trust of these systems, but also the tools and services that allow for greater agent autonomy. The question around what happens if my AI agent goes rogue with my money and all of this is one of the most common things that gets brought up by the average consumer. And Coinbase is building guardrails and limits and whatnot to help protect against that inside a user's account, as well as isolated portfolios and all the other features to allow your agent to trade autonomously safely. Fortunately, we haven't seen any major issues in production yet, but this is also for our custodial rails. And I'm sure the other panelists have a lot to say around these on-chain edge cases and not, which I'm very curious to hear about.
Yeah, and thank you so much for that transition. Dean, this is what you were speaking about in your intro and kind of where WiMAX is porting in. Would love to hear your answer for this question as well.
From our perspective, our focus is on agents enabling humans and agents helping humans to deploy their capital or helping humans to accomplish things on-chain. And fundamentally, you can't trust the agents. They don't think like we do. They're very, very smart idiot savants that will come up with amazing things, but can go off the rails. Just recently, there was a mere $200,000 loss where an agent just got talked out of its money. It wasn't a security breach. There was no compromise of systems. It was just that an agent believed something it shouldn't have and went off the rails. And that's not something that you're going to improve by getting that better training there. You improve that by having the environment around the agent enforce the rules. So no matter what the agent tries to do, it can't take my money and send it to somebody else. It can only take my money and trade with this in the prescribed venues on the tokens that I care about or on the assets that I care about with the limits that I, the human who actually owns that money, sets. And so that's, a lot of the goal there is to make sure that the infrastructure around agents ensures that the humans stay sovereign over the humans' assets. And that enables us to actually unleash the power of agents. You're no longer worrying about what they might do. You know what they can do, and you're okay with that. And now it's free to innovate and be as powerful as it can be within the limits that you prescribe. And that's, to me, sort of the hard thing. And people, we talked about this, we started presenting about this back in 2024, and now everyone talks about guardrails. But it's very important how you achieve those in order to actually protect people's money.
Agreed. And these segues have been so phenomenal. Thank you guys so much. Brig, going to you with this, we're talking about how we can safeguard, how we can entrust agents, and we're bringing finance and privacy and compliance into the same breath as AI agents. And it's colliding fast, both on-chain and off-chain, agents needing to transact, and this happening increasingly. How do you approach this? What does privacy actually mean in this regard? And how would you approach this as well?
Yeah, so privacy could be getting a significant upgrade in this agentic era. Agents can actually kind of be the perfect middleman for a lot of different scenarios where a human customer wants to share some private information but doesn't necessarily want to share it with a human. And agents could end up being the perfect middlemen in those sorts of scenarios. But that all depends on, like, as Dean was saying, our ability to constrain the agent's behavior. Because once the agent has the information, we need to make sure that they are not sending it out to places it isn't meant to go. So what we're doing at Realign Labs is creating some infrastructure both to define the guardrails around agent behavior and then also to enforce those guardrails on the agent's behavior. What that looks like ultimately, and I can say more about this as we talk today, is like secure enclaves in which agents can act, and then we can attest that the data they worked with was never leaving that enclave.
I love it. Now, I could talk about this for hours with you guys. And we're broaching a lot of different conversations, right? From constraining agents for privacy concerns, for security concerns, for compliance concerns. And something that Dean had mentioned as well is kind of this, the interest of security. And you had mentioned an attack recently which used a prompt injection. There was a malicious instruction hidden somewhere. Essentially, he was able to talk the agent out of giving its money away. And so I'm interested in, Lincoln, I'll go to you first with this one, and then we'll go to you, Dean. How are you all approaching this aspect of crypto security, AI security? What is actually possible, and what are the gaps that we need to expose and fix?
Yeah, so in terms of the actual transactions and execution and whatnot, anecdotally, we haven't seen a ton of issues in production, fortunately. That's not to say that they haven't happened, but I think the volume of agents that are interacting are such that these edge cases haven't necessarily been uncovered yet. The area where I see the biggest gap in terms of how we bring on more buyers and sellers into this agentic marketplace is probably around identity and reputation. It's something that's largely discussed but never actually actioned on. And that's both because of a lack of maturity of the space and a general confusion around what the right structure is. Like, I trust going on eBay or Craigslist or any one of these marketplaces because there's a system of reputation that enables me to know that the seller that I'm buying from is going to send me my goods. And the same exact thing is true in this world of agents as well. If we assume that there's going to be a long tail of services that are being provisioned and whatnot, if I want to go off and pay for that agent to do a task, I want to know that that agent isn't just going to take my funds and do nothing with it. Thus far, given that we're interacting primarily through microtransactions, it hasn't been a massive issue. If I lose a quarter, that's unfortunate, but it's not the end of the world, and I'll just never interact with that again. But that's one of the gaps in the market that I see from the payments side that needs to be addressed and likely will be addressed by a variety of different solutions going forward.
I love that. And Dean, I see you smiling. I see you. Please feel free to take it.
Yeah, I got to bring some controversy in. So I love Lincoln's answer, but I also disagree. Agents, this goes back to agents don't think like us. There is no real accountability for agents. This agent misbehaves, I shoot it in the head and no one mourns, right? It has no history. It has no hostages to fortune. It has no house. It has no worry about how it's going to perform in 10 years. So there's a level of accountability that our intuitions think we should be able to get that you simply can never have, anytime in the foreseeable future for agents. And this is why you can't protect the system by, watching the barn and closing the door after the horse leaves, as the old phrase goes, right? You can't log your way into it. You can't train it better. Because the fact that it did not rug yesterday doesn't mean it won't rug tomorrow, because it had a better idea and it just doesn't grow and evolve and think like we do. And so, there is value for reputation things exactly in the scenario that Lincoln talked about, where, I'm doing incremental payments. I'm at risk a bounded amount. And if I lose that, I'm just going to walk away. It's not worth the dispute. We're just done. And so I am bounding my risk that way. But it is vastly superior to have agents come up with code that can then be run in a confined system in a deterministic fashion, have agents that they don't have direct authority. They are executing a high level intent that is then implemented by deterministic systems. And I know, Coinbase has their permissioning system that they add onto what our agents allowed to do that provides similar kinds of, guardrails outside. And so I think that, reputations would not have helped this 200,000 breach. That loss of $200,000 is really much, much more significant than it sounds like, because the agent market is so early and nascent. This is just the beginning of that kind of failure. And so the question I always want to ask is not, what do I expect the agent to do? What might it do? What has it done? But what could it do? And that's the matter of, what can I enforce around it? So the only things it can do are the things that I can live with. Well, and some of that is, what it can do is request an escalation to the human to do a trade that it's not allowed to do. Or it can deploy my money into a lower interest rate vault rather than a higher interest rate vault. So it can do its job poorly, but nothing it can do can transfer my money to someone else, as an example of the kind of rule I would like to have. Or nothing it can do can move into a vault that has a particular collateral. So I can have a mandate that's enforced without having to rely on the reputation. I just rely on the underlying system.
And Brig, I saw you nodding agreement. Go ahead, please.
Plus one, plus one, plus one. Yeah, I mean, these things are stochastic systems, and that's what's great about them. But that's also what makes them so so difficult and so problematic. And the reason, Dean, I think you're absolutely right about this. The reason we're only seeing a few prototypes make it out to market over the last 18 months is because these things are unpredictable and unsafe. I want to see an agentic frontier that's full of agents that are doing all of their genius things, but they're properly constrained, where they have to pre-register, these are the sorts of actions they might take, particularly when we're talking about egress from a secure enclave in our environment. But also, for payments, sensitive data, we want to have ways that they can share that data with a third party without actually ever being seen by the agent at all. This is what we're working on, is that the very infrastructure that makes this possible.
Can I add one more follow-up? The reputation stuff is huge. It's very important. For me, it's not important for security. It's important for value, right? So I want the reputation of an agent that does a great job at highlighting risks early, or does a great job at finding and discovering the right yields, or reacting, or trading the right things. You just can't rely on that for security. You just want to rely on it for performance. And then reputation is hugely important.
We can have both. You can have a reputation scoring system that includes performance and trust. Yeah.
I love that. And speaking to this, once an agent can move money on its own, it is important that we have something like some guardrails, some way of stopping this. I think the usual answer that, in speaking with folks, is an audit after the fact situation, but like kind of a supervisor agent, if you will. But obviously the way that money is moving on chain and the speed that these transactions are happening, it seems like that would make it technically impossible for us to stop these bad actors. So I'm curious, and Lincoln, would love to start with you on this. How do we stop bad actions from happening? Is it impossible? Would love to hear your thoughts on this.
I think Dean and Brigham both brought up great points around the sort of guardrails and tools that we can put in place to ensure that the agents are only interacting in the way that you want them to. I imagine that there will always be some level of fraud that occurs, as is with any system that exists today. There's always going to be some ability to break the rules. It's a bit of a cat and mouse game, but for sometimes the cat has the advantage, other times the mouse has the advantage. It's really just a matter of continual advancements and making sure that when those breaks happen, there is a proactive response that results in the blast radius of that exploit being as minimal as possible.
Dean, I seen you nodding to that. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, we work very hard to make secure systems that confine things and restrict them, but defense in depth is exactly that. So these things that we have as more frontline defense, like audit in the traditional world, they don't have the same protection, but they're still critical. Right, they're still critical for confining the blast, preventing it from happening. Tracing down who the bad actors are, because often there'll be a human or organization behind it, and those things that as Lincoln says, Coinbase does a lot of and does well. A thing that you mostly can't do is achieve more security by adding more rules to a particular agent that's trying to act. You can't, as we know, you can't say, "Oh, that thing you were doing, don't do that one." Just stay within some set of some particular area, because it will go off the rails again. And so that goes back to either hard guardrails or soft guardrails with other agents. And I know, I think Lincoln, you guys have been doing some stuff with that as well. And so being able to have deterministic rules, human processes, and organizational processes behind that, as Lincoln alluded to, that helps make the system of execution robust and keep going is critical. In the non-custodial world, you want all those things as well, right? You want the strong enforcement. You want the kind of enforcement that WiMAX provides of guardrails, or that Brigham has been talking about. But you also have governance processes outside that humans and organizations participate in to make sure that when things do go off the rails, and they will, the damage is contained, the damage is not repeated, the systems adapt, and people put in the clever hooks they missed. I mean, with strong enforcement, it is still the case that users can say, "Hey, I want to buy that meme coin, and I'm willing to take an 80% slippage." And if they can say that, they're at really high risk, because when even when the agent is following their instructions. And so you're never 100%.
Right. No question. And Brig, just closing out this point, would love to go to you to kind of close this out. What can we do? What are you all working on to kind of address this as well?
We're working on this problem both at design time and at runtime. As I was saying before, like, I think a lot more agents aren't deployed because they aren't properly constrained, and they're not properly constrained because at this point early on in the agentic era, we don't know all the guardrails that need to be put in place to drastically decrease the chance of the agent doing something that would be harmful to a customer. At design time, we actually need some way of discovering those guardrails, and we have a tool called Agent Arbitrator. This thing is really nifty and exciting. It's a simulation environment where we pulled in a million businesses and use cases into a game theory engine that will then run out different scenarios between an agent and another agent, or an agent and a human, and discover the best set of kind of guardrails. We call them atoms, policy atoms, but guardrails is how they're talked about. The best set of guardrails that you can apply onto your agent, so that we get the upside of an agent being clever and making decisions, so to say, as it goes along, but not so much of the downside. So that system, Agent Arbitrator, is something that agent designers can use at design time to discover, the hundreds or thousands of little atomic guardrails that they can apply onto their agent. That works pretty well, except in scenarios where, like, as Dean says, it's plausible that an agent can be talked into giving up all of its rule set, And for that, we have a a runtime environment that we call the Citadel. Here, we're really focused on keeping a gap, an air gap between a human's private data and a third-party agent. And so we have their interaction happening in a trusted execution environment, and it's intermediated by what we call a docent, which is a small language model that we've really trained to make sure that no information is passing from the human's knowledge vault to the agent, unless it's been pre-registered. So there's a registry for agents where they can say, like, here are all the different kinds of actions that we would take. Here are the places in our workflows where we want to have an egress or call out to another tool. And all of that has to be pre-registered in advance and approved. And when you have that scenario where you have a great set of guardrails and you have kind of people talk about it sometimes as a supervising agent, and it's an entrusted execution environment where we can actually measure whether there's any data that's leaking out of that trusted execution environment before burning it down after a session. When you add all of those things together, we actually end up with a scenario where the agent is quite well governed. So that's where we're taking it.
That's incredibly exciting. And I can already tell there's some great partnership business opportunities between the three of you as building in very complementary ways. And Lincoln, I wanted to kind of bring it back over to you. You know, there's been few people in the industry that have kind of done more for moving the Web3 industry along, as well as bringing AI in this agentic era into just bringing it to market and bringing it to the people. I'd love to talk a little bit about, as we're talking about safeguarding and protecting people that are using this, kind of what you are building to allow them to use it and what you are developing.
Yeah, totally. So we have a couple of different products oriented toward agents. The one that everyone knows is X402. It's our internet native payments protocol. At this point now, it's more than just a Coinbase thing. It's actually been extended into a open source project underneath its own Linux run foundation alongside partners like Cloudflare, Stripe, AWS, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Shopify, and so on. So this is our attempt to create this standard on which we think internet native payments will happen. And we view it as a very nice inflection point that converges with AI agents. The other thing that we're working on a lot is Coinbase for Agents. It is our CLI MCP product. The idea there is to allow agents to plug into your existing Coinbase account, do so using an isolated portfolio, and be able to pay and trade, manage your money, really do whatever you want, however powerful you might want it. If you're a more straightforward, simple user, you don't want to set up an agent inside Cloud Code, or you have concerns about the agent providing you with sound recommendations, then I would recommend Coinbase Advisor, which is a new product that we actually just released inside the Coinbase app. It's rolling out iteratively now, and the whole idea there, it is SEC licensed fiduciary advice to allow you to ask your agent, what should I invest in? How do I get exposure to space? All of these different questions and queries that you might have, we have an agent that will give you an actionable recommendation with a widget you can directly tap inside the Coinbase interface to make that trade happen.
No big deal. That's amazing. And
yeah,
Dean,
it's been fun.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I have so many more questions, y'all. I know that we're getting tight on time. Dean, I'm curious, as we're talking about all the things like what Coinbase is allowing people to do with agents, as we continue to move further and further into this new era, there's a lot of coordination that's happening around, agents triggering rapid correlated crashes in DeFi markets, for example. And individually safe agents can still create these system-wide risks, right? I'm curious, how are you guys approaching solving this at WiMAX? Is this solvable? And kind of talk us through a little bit about how you're looking at that.
So, in some sense, that's a fundamental market risk. It doesn't really have anything to do with agents per se. Whether there was the 1987 crash where everyone was investing in the right, particular kinds of instruments, or in 2010, high frequency trading took a crash because the high frequency trading didn't have the right kind of rate limits and circuit breakers. And so once one of them went off the rails, the rest of them followed them over the cliff. And so that's a system design problem. Now, the thing about agents is, or at least agents where part of the motivation, and part of the motivation we hear from customers is users want their own customized strategies, right? We ship this thing where people could do single signature deployment of assets out into, vaults across multiple different chains. And user said, "This is great. I love it. Can you automate it for me? And oh, by the way, I just want this one little custom thing. And I want it to all work as the world gets more and more complicated. Can you do that for me?" So that one little custom thing means even with broad adoption, you will see uncorrelated behavior, and there's still that tail risk that everyone wants to get in on the next big thing. And so you have some bad behavior. But the power of agents actually is giving many more actors with many more different directions and motivations. And so I expect you'll actually see less risk there than you have in current systems.
I love it. Y'all, I have so many more questions, but I know we're getting close to the end here. So, Dean, I'm going to take it back to you. First of all, thank you guys so much for your time. I have so many more questions to ask, but talk a little bit about what you're excited about that you are working on. What's next for you going into the second half of 2026 here?
Sure. So we started talking about guardrails a long time ago. The particular thing that's most important to lead with is they don't provide breaks. What they do is they enable agents to shine, right? If you can safely unleash them, because guardrails enable you to feel comfortable, that is, to me, the critical unlock for enabling people to cross the trust gap. So I'm very much looking forward to rolling that out to treasury partners that have been putting money into WiMAX, to customers that are using it, integrating with other services out there, where we can go from our single signature deployment now to agents enabling that, automating that, and then rapidly being able to absorb more of both Web3 and beyond of these financial instruments that, Web3 started the process of democratizing them and making them available to many more people in many more places. Agentics lets us bring some expertise to it so that an individual person that has a day job doing not financial analysis, can actually go and participate in these markets and win from them. I can protect my assets and grow them over time. And I'm really excited to be shipping product that helps enable that.
I am too, man. This has been, I can't wait to see what you all are working on. And Brig, same question to you. I know this is, very much aligned with what you are building. So would love to hear, similar to you, what's next for Realign Labs.
It's a super exciting time for us because we've been building these different products with their own multiple services. So the Arbitrator is going to be available in the latter half of 2026. We also have been getting the Citadel going, and we'll have the Wiser AI registry coming online as well. So all of these tools for agent builders so that they can cross that gap and get to a place where their agents are safe on that frontier. So it's going to be a lot of work, but we're already pretty deep into it, and it's very exciting. Great time for us.
I love it, man. Thank you so much. And Lincoln, closing out with you, we'd love to hear what's next for Coinbase. What's next for you going into the second half of this year?
There's an experiment, a hypothesis that I've wanted to test for a long time, and it's finally about to come true. So I think there's a very compelling opportunity to help catalyze this agentic payments by leveraging one of the core strengths that Coinbase has, which is distribution over trading. Thus far, we've seen a lot of supply side interest and excitement around agentic payments, lots of infrastructure providers, but we're still lacking that real catalyzing moment or just these early flywheels that enable agentic payments to really start taking off. And I'm very excited for Coinbase for Agents to start enabling users to pay for X402 endpoints using their retail USDC balances. So what this will enable is an agent to go off and pay for data from a data provider that exists, like Nansen or Glassnode or Artemis or any one of these, and then use that to make more well-informed trading decisions, therefore increasing the value and getting this access to proprietary premium data. There's a blog post from Vitalik from around 2017, 2018, where he hypothesized that agents will be the primary traders on low liquidity prediction markets because the cost for them to do data analysis and reasoning is so much lower than it is for humans that it doesn't make sense for us to think about this. So we're going to be launching this within the next week or so. And I'm quite excited to see how people interact with this, if they interact with this at all, where we can find some of these sticky, early exciting moments for agentic payments and trading.
Man, I'm excited for that as well. And I'm so grateful for you guys' time. Thank you for coming in and joining us at Blockhouse. And y'all make sure you follow the speakers, follow their companies, follow their journeys, and stay tuned because they're cooking, y'all. Thank you guys so much again. This was incredible.